Hi, my name is Carly Kattenberg, and today we are going to discuss the Poetic Books. In the Bible, there are 5 poetic books, all which fall under this category of free verse, organized by couplets, and one of the things that I notice the most is metaphors and how they compare things throughout the 5 books. These 5 books include Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, and Job. When you begin to look at these poetic books, one of the first things I encourage you to do is look and identify the genre and situation. Here are a few of which can be in place. Is it a poem of Thanksgiving? Is it a poem of history? Lament means the expression of pain and confusion and anger. So what is the author trying to get across in this poem? Why is it valuable to us and important? One of the first books we are going to look at is Psalms. Psalms is over 150 Hebrew poems. These are songs of sorrow and of joy and of thanksgiving, but also just a lot of grief that these people were carrying. And out of all of the 283 quotes from the Old Testament and the New Testament, 116 of those are actually from the Psalms. And these Psalms were created to express ourselves, but also as a prayer book for the people who were exiled to just be able to pray and to worship God and have moments of peace and reverence in Him. Proverbs is the second book that we will discuss today. It's split up into 2 sections. And the first section is that Solomon asked for wisdom. And the whole purpose of this section of this book is so that you can also gain wisdom. And so we also see 10 speeches from father to son and how to gain the wisdom that comes from God. In the second section, we see it as meant to be a reference book, but also continuing in that search of the wisdom that can come only from God. This next poetic book is one of the hardest for me to grasp. It truly looks at how, with all of the nonsense in the world, our lives apart from God are truly meaningless. And as we look at this word hevel, which means vapor or smoke, that's used so many times throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, the author truly questions, how do we live our lives in the midst of hevel or in the midst of this nonsense? And you see this wrestle with God of just, Lord, how do we live in the midst of this? And so when you look at the poetic book of Ecclesiastes, you really see when we are living in that moment of despair, God, how do we live in your grace and peace? This next book that we are going to look at, and the 4th poetic book, is Song of Solomon, also known as Song of Songs. Now, based on the title, you may think that Solomon is the author of these books, which he is referenced in Proverbs of just this man of true wisdom. But really, actually, as we look at the book of Solomon, of Song of Solomon, we see that the main voice is actually a woman. And when it's referencing Solomon, it's actually discussing the wisdom that Solomon brought, the true wisdom that comes, because he was known as a man of such wisdom. And so we see 2 themes. It's the intense desire of seeking and finding, and also the joy of physical attraction, which when you look at this book can seem a little weird, but also just the embrace of God. And the last poetic book is Job. Job is a book that many people have wrestled with for many years. Why would God allow such terrible things to happen to good people? One of the words that I love that's described as Job is blameless. He is seen as blameless before God, and yet we see this man who is blameless just be hurt against and persecuted and accused against Satan. And so as so many things are stripped away from Job, we see God bless him for remaining faithful. And one of the things I just love so much to see is that Job actually lived for 140 years after his troubled time. Actually, Job sees 4 generations. How awesome is that? Those are the 5 poetic books. They are meant to be encouraging and also remind us in times of despair who we truly belong to. Thank you so much for listening.